Hi, Paul. Thank you so much for chatting today about conversations with normal people.
Yeah,
Um, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Very excited. This feels like a
Very
merge of
excited.
worlds, which is
I
exciting.
know. I
Yeah.
feel like we're a long way away from sunny West Island.
Oh, that's true. Although we did get to hang out down in Cork, which was nice.
We did,
We
yeah.
did.
We've been sent some questions, haven't we, that we could dive into and kind of ask each other and then both bounce
Hmm.
off and then see what happens.
Yeah, I suppose like if it's okay if I can I kick off?
Yeah, 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 go for it.
But I'd like maybe to begin at the beginning with kind of your relationship to Conversations, the novel. And I'm sure you've answered these questions 100 times, so we can like, but just like your initial relationship to the novel and Sally as a writer, and whether you were a fan or not, did that kind of imbue a degree of kind of fear or intimidation with approaching kind of her work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, I was a fan. I had read both Conversations to Normal People when they came out. And so first and foremost, and I guess that was like a couple of years before, because you guys shot in 2019.
Yeah, summer of
So
2019.
so
Yeah.
yeah, I'd read the books a couple years. I read the books when they came out. They didn't like recommend it, but I think some friends or my mom or someone had passed it on to me. And so I was coming at it from the point of view as a fan, and like, many people were kind of swept up in the Sally Rooney phenomenon that kicked off. And I didn't know, I didn't actually know they were making Normal People until I think about halfway through, I had a conversation with one of the producers who actually mentioned it to me.
Okay.
And then someone said that Conversations at some point was going to be um, kind of
Okay.
tackled, but it was at the back of my mind, and I didn't ever think it would kind of come my way. And it was one of those things that at the time I thought I knew what I was doing work wise, and so when I was asked to audition, it's one of those things where you throw your hat in the ring and you cross your fingers. But I was kind of like,
Yeah.
if it doesn't happen,
There's
it's
something
all right.
else.
I know what I'm doing. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was a lovely surprise to come about and kind of get the thumbs up. And yeah, I mean, I think there's like pressure with anything, and I suppose, yeah, because it's so beloved and the books are so beloved, there's you want to do justice to something that means so much to so many people.
Exactly.
um but I think when you're filming, you have to put all of that out of your head, otherwise it'll just kill you and just like ruin it.
Are you
um
good, like are you good at that? Is it like are you able to kind of compartmentalize that? Or I found at times like, and I'm curious to know what you think about this, whether like at times when we were shooting, like I was able to kind of totally forget about the kind of popularity of the novel, and then there was other like say when you're in like a scene that I vividly remember, like from my first encounter of the book, and then suddenly you're in it, you're like, oh Jesus, we're doing this scene that like there's moments when it kind of fluctuates for me, and I wonder if that was similar for you.
yeah, yeah, I think it does. I think it both, it's nice when you can kind of forget, I think.
Mm.
But it definitely does fluctuate. I think one of the things, like, I have actually, mm, in the last few years found harder, and try and forget about when you're shooting, is the consequences of something when you make it and when you put it out.
Yeah,
Otherwise it starts to kind of eat away at the joy of doing it in the first place.
yeah,
Um and I think I am able to have that separation, definitely, but there are times, I don't know, when there's so much noise around everything else that you have to kind of really make sure you do turn that volume down. Do you find that too?
yeah. But how do you do that? Because I'm always like, I think what you're saying is so right, but I think I fail at that more than I am successful. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Like I feel like in theory, um, I suppose it depends. I think, and maybe this is like a good jumping off point for Lenny, but I think he like creates an environment where he makes that easier than I've experienced in other times. Like there's been times when I've been on something and it's like you're aware that the script is brilliant and the directors are brilliant, you're working with other great actors, so you kind of feel like the only reason it would fail would be because like of your like I feel that often when I'm working. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be the reason that this is. But I think Lenny totally creates this bubble and this environment where he enables you to forget about the end goal and allows you to think about the process.
Yeah, I think it really is a bubble with him. Like I think maybe there's a luxury that for something like shooting these shows, it was quite a long time. It was 5-6 months, and so
Yeah.
you really do get to create a new kind of family and a bubble and a world that you kind of you feel like it is just you guys, and there is a kind of safety to everything else outside, I think. And also COVID probably played into that a little bit. Like it felt very sheltered in a way. But I think Lenny certainly is so inclusive in his process and so collaborative that you are so embedded in everything right from the beginning, and so just down to earth and chill, and creates such a nice vibe that I don't know exactly, because I definitely struggle with it as well, but he does kind of manage to build a bit of a wall around everything, so that hopefully you can turn off any anxiety until the end ish.
It's kind of, I always find it impressive that you don't even see him building the wall. You're just kind of like 2 or 3 weeks into the shoot and you're like, oh, we're completely protected and validated and kind of supported in our creative choices. Yeah, I just think that's
Yeah. And he said, I mean, I remember him saying to me, he finds the first few days of a shoot, or particularly the first day of a shoot, really tricky. And he'll often think like, I just know I probably won't use much from that first day. But I've definitely worked with people before who, and each to their own, but like they don't shield that anxiety from the people they work with. If they're the director, it's part of what's in the room. But of course he has I'm sure he has his anxieties and his fears and his apprehensions, but he never fails to kind of do his best to put you in a safe space, I think. Which is quite amazing.
You said something when we were down at Fastnet Film Festival when you were talking about Nick that I thought was really interesting, because there's like I suppose you could draw a kind of archetypal Sally Rooney male character, but I was interested, like I loved hearing you talk about how the zooming in and zooming out process of Nick, like the kind of what Francis, what an audience has to see, kind of like from a broad stroke kind of creation of character, but also kind of having to modulate where you wanted Nick to land in terms of whether it was like a zoomed in moment with Frances where she's really intimately with Nick versus kind of what he projects to the outside world. And I think that like translates beautifully, and maybe we can talk about the scene in the bar in episode 11 where you kind of feel like that's he's told, like there's a kind of real journey for me watching it as an audience member, for an audience to get to that moment with Nick where you see the cause and effect of that, where the zooming in and zooming out makes sense. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know if that's a particularly like articulate question, or I don't even know what I'm saying with it, but it's kind of, I really felt like it all come together, like kind of intimacy that you created with Alison versus this kind of like this kind of heavy sadness that is kind of removed from the world a little bit, and you get the audience gets that wonderful explanation in episode 11. And I'm just wondering how you can, like how that process kind of developed as you were shooting and through prep. And I think it's just so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. I guess that bit in the bar is something he's been putting off saying for a long time, which is indicative of a lot of, I suppose, indicative of the way he feels about his kind of story and the place that he's in an interesting way. But I suppose, it's a real moment of kind of unexpected honesty where he does just kind of pour everything out in a way, and still in quite a quiet way, and not a kind of hopefully self-indulgent way, but he's as honest as he is able to be. And it's interesting because it's the explanation in a way to why his behavior is the way it is, particularly early on when he is so seemingly closed down and guarded and has his cards close to his chest. And there's some frustration with that. I think I was saying at Fastnet as well, like you can understand that why an audience and why Francis would be frustrated with that and want to kind of rattle him slightly and shake him, but so it isn't till a lot later that you have the explanation for that. So that was like a strange thing to think about, knowing that there would
Yeah,
be this kind of, why are you like, come on,
yeah.
like this
I feel
slight
like
frustration.
that's like the similarities of both. I feel like that's a definite, like if there's a Venn diagram between like Nick and Connell, it's like there's moments in the show where you definitely want to grab them both by the shoulders and just be
Mm.
like, articulate what you're feeling
Yeah,
for
yeah,
God,
yeah, yeah.
and I think actually both of those kind of reveals as to what is kind of at the center of their like emotional life comes quite late in both series, right? It's like
Mm. Mm.
Connell is the one with the like with therapist in like kind of episode 10, and your kind of emotional reveal is in like episode 11. And it's interesting hearing you say that the kind of like maybe not anxiety but kind of being aware that there's a long distance to travel from the beginning of the show
Until you
to that
know.
moment, and you kind of just throw it up to the writing and go like I'm held and I feel sustained by it, but it is a kind of scary feeling going like the audience is going to
Yeah,
stay with it
yeah,
to and that's what I love about the kind of pacing of both of the shows is it's like it feels like it's on a different time signature to a lot of other TV shows that I've seen, like both Normal People and Conversations. It
yeah.
just kind of allows the story and not so much the story because the story is kind of like, but the characters to breathe and kind of evolve and surprise an
Mm.
audience. But I thought
Yeah.
that was so beautiful and moving.
Oh, thanks. No, I think you're right that like the 30-minute kind of pockets of time
Mm.
work really well for some reason for Sally Rooney world. Like, because if it was an hour, I'd still watch it, of course. But
Yeah,
there's something about these like these slightly extended like breaths, this
yeah,
whatever it is, this like this 30-minute pocket of, it's not quite real time with people, but it's not far off, and it
no.
allows for every thing unsaid, said,
Mm.
communicated, not communicated, and it's not driven in kind of an adrenaline fueled way that often TV is. It's not racing ahead or looking for a huge narrative curve. It's quite like intricate and delicate, and it just, I think it seems to work really well in that 30-minute space.
Yeah,
um,
and like plot is secondary to me, or maybe people would disagree, but I feel like it's not
yeah.
nothing like there's kind of center points of like the series in terms of something happens, but very
Mm.
little happens. It's like
Yeah.
a series of conversations, pardon the pun, of like, but it's like it kind of is that, and I find it really satisfying to watch.
How do you find, to say, when you had that, it's episode 10 when you have that
Yeah,
at the moment with the therapist, or well, not just that scene, generally shooting out of order. Like, I
yeah,
don't know when you did that, because this was obviously this was the first lead role on screen for you, wasn't it?
yeah, yeah.
How
Well,
how do you find kind of tracking everything
I
when
find
it's
tracking because I hadn't done it before. I kind of had this kind of fear of like forgetting the center of the character because I'd done theater, but like I'd only done theater before, and there's kind of a real like there's a real joy to kind of once you're up and running, everything's
mm,
in sequence.
mm,
You can't stop. Nobody can get in the way, only yourself. Whereas with that, I put a kind of real onus on kind of mapping it all out. But I think the longer you get into a shoot, as I'll go like Lenny protected the kind of start of the shoot as much as he could, and that a lot of the first 2 weeks of the shoot was all in um Marianne's house, and that was all kind of centered around the beginning of the relationship. So we were getting a lot of the flavors that we would need for
mm.
later on in the kind of school life of both Connell and Marianne. And then I think we jumped around a little bit more into the second block. But I think at that point, and it's not a like confidence in terms of like kind of ease, but it's like I knew
Mm.
who he was at that point, and it's always difficult, like the jumping around. But I think tracking, I had a healthy kind of fear of it, so that kind of allowed me to be kind of diligent with just doing it like, I don't know if you do this, but kind of like just mapping, taking it week by week in a shoot, and kind of
Yeah.
taking the Sunday and going, this is what we're shooting this week. I'm prepped, I'm ready. Some things we're going to lose a couple of scenes here that we're going to have to throw into next week, or whatever. But that kind of just biting it off in
Yeah.
in chunks, rather than kind of looking at the being at the foot of the mountain staring up at the top. It's like that's kind
Yeah.
of a long-winded answer at how I would approach that. And I imagine it was the same for did you guys jump around quite a bit, or?
Yeah, I guess like normal, there's a lot of jumping around. I think it is that thing. Yeah, I find it's always like at the beginning. Once I guess you find a routine and a rhythm in that kind of space and world, then you cross your fingers and think, well, hopefully I'm in a groove now.
Yeah.
But it is that thing of, yeah, getting to Saturday, Sunday, thinking,
Yes.
what have you got next week?
Yeah.
And panicking, and trying to figure it out from there. But no, I just remember, because I remember on my first job, just being like, and it's an obvious thing, but I just hadn't like, I was like, well, you don't shoot in order. Like,
I know, it's crazy. It is
mad.
like, yeah. I was listening to a like podcast with just Mike Mills was talking about like how
Mm,
he shoots in order, and I'm like, I am. It's one of the things I would love, like just as a like
yeah.
an experiment to see. And I know Ken Loach shoots in order and things like that, but like that kind
Yeah.
of luxury from an act, like purely from a selfish actor's perspective, I would just adore that, because I think it
Yeah. Yeah.
would.
Yeah.
Um,
I did like a tiny part in Souvenir 2, Joanna Hogg's films, and
it's
she
so
always
good.
shoots in order. I would love to like do that whole journey with her or
Yeah.
someone like that. And like, not because you don't know the shape of a scene as well, you don't know what's going to happen, and so you're literally discovering it in real time.
Wow, like because I knew I chatted with somebody who's working on that, and they were saying that I thought it was only true for her, but is it true for all of the characters in it? Because I remember Tom Burke or something in the first one had like a kind of Bible, but it wasn't like a script. Like, did you have any idea
No,
what?
I mean, I was only there for a few days, but I mean, Joanna had said, "This is your part. This is you're a film editor. These are the shape of the scenes. Oh, this is what I want the information out of the scene." So she said, basically, you're gonna in the main scene that you'll go for a drink with this girl, and she'll ask you back at some point, and you tell her you can't because your boyfriend's sick. But because so little is known, it made me kind of work so much behind everything, just in case she was like, "And how's your brother doing?" Like, just in case,
Yeah, yeah.
you kind of
Those
backload so
big
much and everything.
yeah.
But
Um,
I feel like Lenny would really suit. I mean, he's got his way of working down, but he's so wonderful at building those
yes.
naturalistic worlds. Like, it would be interesting to do that with him as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he does work with that kind of like he's I'm sure he was the same with you, but very kind of like would take on a lot of script notes from myself, and like we would just have conversations around the
Mm.
script, and I think by proxy of those conversations, it allows you to feel flexible with it on the day. That if there's something that suddenly you're like, oh, I really liked this line 3 months ago, and we were rehearsing it in a shed in the corner of Dublin somewhere, but we're
Mm.
on set now. He's got this wonderful kind of flexibility with going and kind of
Yeah,
going. The script is like a strong template, but it's not like a Bible. It's not like
yeah.
a precious. It's everything that the line infers is precious to Lenny, rather than the line itself, I think.
Mm. Yeah, he's amazing because he is so like he interrogates everything and is so detailed. But as you say, there's a flexibility and it's not overbearing. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like he is rigorous with everything, but never in a way that you feel strangled by. Like,
No. uh,
he's always willing to, try something new or throw something out.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Did you
Um,
meet? So you met Daisy in the audition process?
yeah, I was just about to ask you about the audition process, but yeah, we kind of met on the second round of um, chemistry reads. So I did like one set with some actors, and there was nobody in that they wanted for. Marianne, so I quickly panicked and was like, well, we're not, and if they can't find anything, they're going to go back to the drawing board and look for a different Connell. But
Right.
luckily, or thankfully, they didn't. And I think Daisy was the second last on that day. And did you chemistry read with Alison as well?
No, we actually didn't.
You didn't, yes. But I knew straight away that it was going to be Daisy. But so
Mm.
did you just Zoom it, or how did that work?
Pretty much. I think she'd been cast about a week before, and they just sent, you know, three scenes to tape, and so I made a tape, and then they kind of said we might do a chemistry read. I was like, oh, just give it to me, please.
Just give
And
it.
and then luckily they did. But as soon as we were both cast, so I didn't meet Alison, you know, until a week after I was cast, and we were then immediately put on Zoom with Lenny and chatted about you know, scenes and whatnot. Like,
How far out was that from shooting?
well, it got increasingly longer just because of COVID. Like,
Oh,
I think it was October 2020, and but then and we were meant to start in December, and then we ended up starting in like April or something. So it kept shifting back. I don't think it was until February 2021 that Lenny, myself, and Alison all met in Belfast for the first time in this like weird abandoned hotel and got to read through
got to go in.
everything. Yeah, I mean the COVID side of it was quite not nice in a way, but it did mean that we
Yeah.
felt like a real pack. Like we had no one else to see, and Belfast was still partly shut down when we arrived, so you just had to hang out with each other, which was quite nice.
Yeah,
That was
definitely
nice.
helps. I think it would, and conversate or a show like Conversations would definitely benefit from that kind of
Mm,
bubbling. Like I think lots of, like that's true, probably lots of things, but I think it does kind of, or having pretty much only, I think Normal People is the only thing I've ever shot that hasn't been in some form of a COVID bubble, and I think it does.
mm,
There is a benefit to it, as brutal and kind of frustrating as being in a COVID bubble and kind of being limited with what you
mm.
can do and see and people you can be around. But yeah, it's an interesting kind of I'm curious to see what it's like to go back to a kind of non-COVID bubble
Mm,
world and be like, what are we doing? Why aren't we all hanging out all the
mm. How did you find I mean, you didn't shoot in COVID, but it came out in COVID. And so
Yeah.
how was that experience for you and seeing the reaction to it from behind closed doors?
I think there's like two sides to that conversation. Like there's one part that was like it would have been really fun to like go to like Tribeca Film Festival with Daisy and the
Mm,
gang and like done the kind of fun stuff, or to my mind, as somebody looking from it from that perspective of like a show kind of landing in a major way, and you're kind of like, it'd be fun to kind of run around and
mm,
do that but I think in retrospect, with like 2 years since it's been out or whatever it is, I'm like really grateful.
mm,
As awful and brutal as COVID has been, I was grateful to kind of have to experience it with a kind of more feet on the ground, enforced um
yeah.
manner, you know, kind of. I think it allowed me to kind of quickly shift from a kind of celebrating the show into kind of work. And I feel like if there hadn't been COVID, we would have been just kind of running around the US for like a couple of months, and I wouldn't have been kind of
Mm,
focused on the next things as COVID kind of allowed me to be. But having said all that, it was like something like Fastnet, for example, was lovely to kind of
yeah.
meet. Like we'd met before, but kind of meet properly and kind of
Yeah.
have the Element Gang and Alison there. And I think we were only missing Daisy, but yeah, it's nice to kind of be
Yeah. It was
dipping
so
out,
nice.
or kind of moving out into the world in a kind of more expansive way now post COVID. Or
Yeah.
you know, it's not going anywhere, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to do Fastnet again,
Yes.
definitely.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Um, all right, we are being wrapped up. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for talking, Paul.
No, lovely to chat with you.
Great to see you. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'll see you soon.
See you soon.